just to break down the basics, you have the handle and the horns. That's going to matter, especially as we do workshops later on. So this is a 25-pound kettlebell, 12 kilo about. For women, that's where I would start. I think that's a good starting weight. For men, probably more like a 16 kilo or 35 pound, or a 20 kilo, 45 pound. I'm rounding, so please don't attack me in my math. Okay, so first thing that you need to know with the kettlebells, just like with any kind of weight training, is that the most important thing is your lats. And so your lats are these big fan-shaped muscles here that attach all the way down to your hips. And contrary to popular belief, they do not do this, okay? What lats do is down. They depress your scapula, okay? So a lot of times people will do something like this. They'll retract and elevate when I tell them to get their lats engaged. Actually, it's a depression like that. So a good way to think about it is if you had like a stick or a dowel or something and you tried to break it, it would be helpful if you use something that's heavy. You feel those muscles there light up. Those are your lats. So those are what's going to be holding onto the bell. There's what hold on to the barbell when you do any kind of powerlifting, any kind of barbell training. They're probably, let me just fix this, the most important part of really any kind of lifting that you do. So starting in a plank position. I know what you're thinking. What the fuck are you talking about, plank? I thought we were going to swing around some kettlebells. We'll get to that. Everything at the top of your kettlebell swing, squat, your press, your clean, your snatch, everything is always a plank. So the integrity of your lift will really only be as good as your plank is. So starting up onto your hands, and I would do planks as part of your warm-up too, until you can graduate to more intense stuff, but start with your hands. So your hands are going to be directly under your shoulders, and then you'll extend one foot back and then the other. So I want you to make this active, okay? You're going to squeeze your thighs together, you're going to flex your quads, you're going to pull your navel up and in, and hug your armpits into the sides of your body. So if you see me from this position, you see how my elbow pits rotate forward? That's lats. You feel how this part of your arm hugs in tighter to the side of your body? That's lats. And so that's going to be really important as we go into the goblet squat today, the very first thing you'll learn. So remember that if you feel like you can hold your plank for 3 minutes, you're probably not really planking, at least not by my standards. You'll want to get as tight as possible. And hopefully you hear in my voice that this is different, right? So that position in particular is the top position of your kettlebell swing. If you go down to your forearms, like so, one foot back and then the other, you're thinking about dragging your elbows to your toes and your toes to your elbows. Squeeze your butt, squeeze your quads, squeeze it all. And that should feel like hard work. That's more like the position at the top of your squat, okay? So if you grab your bell, and you can do this with a dumbbell or something else heavy, but I won't get into it. A kettlebell is going to be much more advantageous for a lot of reasons. Ask me later if you're curious why. So first of all, to get the bell in position, you always want to pick up the bell like it's a deadlift, right? There is literally no fucking point to ever learning any of this shit if you're still picking up heavy stuff like a jackass. The deadlift is literally teaching you how to pick something up. So if you're still picking shit up like this, then congratulations, you've learned nothing. You have to pick it up with a flat back and lift with your legs, okay? So this would be lifting up with my back. This is also not great because especially as it gets heavier, that's not putting your spine in the best position. You see how round it is? So what you want to do, this is actually a hip hinge, but we're not going to get into that today. So bend over to pick it up, sitting your hips back, flat back, and then you pull the bell up to your chest. So this is called a two-handed clean. Everyone seems pretty nervous about hitting themselves in the face with a bell. I've never really seen it happen. Mostly people are too timid, so it usually just winds up looking really weak, for lack of a better word, but what you're trying to do is just hold the bell up into this position, okay? So this is the goblet position. Most people fuck this up right out the gates by holding their bell like this. And you might see where I am when I'm holding it like this. My shoulders are elevated and rounded forward, so I'm not really using my lats. It's possible, but it's not very likely, right? So I'm already starting at a really rounded position, and I'm largely using my biceps to hold the bell, okay? So like this, I can get into the same position that I was in on that forearm plank. So I'm gonna push the bell out away from me a little bit. Don't let it rest on you, because that's also half-assing it, and that's bullshit. So press it away from you, just like that plank. You're thinking about screwing your elbows together, pulling your ribs down. Flex quads, flex glutes, pull abs up and in so that you're in a neutral position. The first movement of the squat is actually a hinge. Hinge, hinge, okay? If I come straight down, yes, I can get into that position, but I don't think you can see me well from there. Give me a sec. You guys gotta see my ass or it's just not the same. Okay, so if I come straight down, yes, I can achieve a squat, but what you might not be seeing is that my feet are kind of rolling in, they're pronating, my knees are kind of rolling in, and I feel a lot of pressure in the front of my hip. If you've lifted weights, probably know someone who has some kind of anterior hip issues. I relate it almost fully to bad squatting. Bad squatting in my mind is coming straight down. There are times and places for that, like Olympic lifting. I'm not an Olympic lifter, I'm a power lifter, and this is a much more advantageous way to squat when you're trying to squat in a powerlifting way, right? Not for the front-loaded Olympic lifts. So what I'm gonna do, hold the bell out behind me, sit back, and then pull myself down into the hole. So here, I'm able to keep a much more vertical shin. I'm loaded more here, whereas here, you see how my weight scoops forward? Not only is that gonna put more pressure on my hip, it's gonna put more pressure on my knees. So, for me, sit back, sink without relaxing and collapsing. You see how when I do that, my spine rounds? You wanna stop just short of that and keep a nice long spine. Obviously, I didn't invent the squat. There's a lot of different opinions about the squat. If you squat in a different way and you like it, good for you. I don't really need to hear about it. But I have found for my clients, far and away, if you sit back in a hinge to initiate your squat versus come straight down, you will not only be able to use a lot more weight, it'll feel a lot better on your hips and your knees. You'll stay more loaded into your heels without using squat shoes. And you'll work the elusive posterior chain a lot more. You know how people say that squatting makes you have a nice ass? Not the way most of people squat. They squat like shit. And if anything, they're gonna be in a wheelchair when they're 45. Okay, so your squat workout. You're gonna bring the bell up to your chest, get into your squat stance. And I didn't even touch on that. The other problem most people have with their squat is that they squat way too narrow and they go with their toes pointed forward. I blame PTs, sorry for this. PTs know I should say PTs who don't lift weights or who don't power lift. They teach the most, the perfect way to squat. Like if our human bodies and our anatomy was perfect, that's how we would squat, right? With our toes pointed forward. Now I'm a good squatter, but if you turn my toes forward and narrow up my stance, I have a really, really hard time getting down into that position. So what I do is I just open my feet a little wider and turn my toes out a little bit more. Ta-da! Ta-da! Okay, so you might have to play around with that position, but far and away, most people do a lot better when their feet are about hip width apart and their toes turn out to 10 and 2. Play around with that. I know some people who squat really narrow with their toes forward and it looks awesome, and that's great. You can't expect to squat the same as everybody else because you're not the same as everybody else. You have injuries, you have genetics, you have a lifestyle that's all going to affect the way that you squat. You have to figure out the way that feels best in your body. Okay, so what you're gonna do is 5 sets of 10 goblet squats. Down. I want you to see how my spine is staying in alignment the whole time. Most common error is this. Look at all that pressure on my low back when I do that. Keep your spine long. When you're hinging, you hinge back from the belly of the hamstring. Down. My spine stays nice and long, including my neck. Set it down safely. So, 5 sets of 10 goblet squats. Don't half-ass them. I'm so out of breath from doing like 3 squats right now. It's kind of embarrassing. Whatever. So if you do them and you'd like me to look at your form, I'm absolutely happy to do that. Just set up your camera. The profile tends to help me better, but I would get the profile and the front view for me to look at. And are there any questions before I sign off? Because we got like a minute. Thank you guys for joining. These motherfuckers and their ab workouts. Jesus Christ. Nothing? Okay, it's gonna be on IGTV anyway. If you have questions, seriously, hit me up. I want you guys to learn how to do this because we're entering an era where your gym is not gonna be available to you. And even if it is, barbells, plates take up a ton of space. They're really expensive. Kettlebells are a great way to keep up your strength where you don't need a lot of space. It's not very expensive. And really you just need like a handful of bells and you have the entire gym at your fingertips. All right, take it easy. I'll see you guys on Friday.